Welcome to Laugh Out Loud, ladies and gentlemen. No, I'm kidding. It's Left on Left, where the left critiques itself and laughs out loud to keep itself from crying. I am your host, Craig Pasta Jardula, the captain, along here with the professor, my co-host, Jeremy Kuzmarov, who's the author of many, many books out there, including his new book, Warmonger, with and about the Clintons. All right, let's talk about this TikTok bill. I don't know if you had a chance to go over this. You talk about a bill that's never going to die. Look what Daniel McAdams put up here. Daniel McAdams, friend of the show. He's been on the Convo Couch before. I was able to share the stage with him at the Rage Against the War Machine. He works for the Ron Paul Institute. He does that great show with them, the Liberty Report. So let's bring his tweet up there, Jamie. And this is what's going to tell you what's really behind this bill to ban TikTok. And it's not really to ban TikTok. It's to give the government overreaching powers where they could shut down any website, shut down any platform, shut down any user. It's pretty much the Patriot Act for the internet on steroids. And this is, computer, why did they ban TikTok? And this is the U.S. views on top opinionated Israeli Hamas attacks. And this is the hashtags. And this is a number of views in 7 days to December 22nd. So let's just say December 15th to December 22nd, right? Free Palestine. A hashtag, 82.6 million views. Free Palestine with the flag and a heart, 35.4 million views. You go all the way down, you get 2 million views for I Stand with Israel. So you can see they were getting their face bashed in as far as information. They were losing the narrative, Professor. Your thoughts on this bill over here, which is really not about banning TikTok, but just about more censorship on the internet.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you hit it right on the mark that they're losing the narrative, so they have to resort to authoritarian measures, and that's a telltale sign of an increasingly authoritarian regime in Washington. And they're losing, I think, the narrative in many areas of Ukraine, certainly. So, and from what I saw hearing, I mean, it was really just like a flashback to the Cold War. I mean, you had this guy Dan Crenshaw and others railing about the Chinese Communist Party. I thought it was a time warp back to the 1950s. And it's that kind of mentality, right part of the McCarthy era, and this paranoia about Chinese subversion of America. In many ways, it's just a mask for the growing authoritarianism of the government that is losing legitimacy and that is embarked on terrible policies that the public sees through.
All right, Jeremy, make sure that you close your other screen because you got two screens out. Now you're echoing it and you're losing it. So close one of the other screens out. You got one open. Close the other one real quick so we can get that down because you got two of them there in the StreamYard. You see how that's working? You got to get rid of one of them. Jamie, Why don't we go to the next video, which shows a little bit more about what we're talking about as far as what we want Congress to tell TikTok that their time is up. We're done with the lies the platform spreads about the Jewish people and Israel. Take action now. And this is from the Jewish Federations of North America. You got the wrong video. The Jewish Federations is the second video in that doc. There we are. Let's play this one up. Take a look at this, guys. This is interesting. There you go. Nothing? All right. Video's not coming up. I think they changed it.
It's not a video. It's just an image.
No, there was, but they changed it. My bad. But anyways, more. And let's take a look at that real quick. I'm going to get into this really quickly, guys, and take a look. They're pretty much stating that they want TikTok gone because they're spreading lies. They're being anti-Semitic. And it says here in this article or in this statement, on Wednesday, March 13th, the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act passed the House. And this is what we're talking about right here, the Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. So really, to tell you the truth, Jeremy, they're doing, Professor, excuse me, I'm sorry. They're doing what they always do in the name of national security, right? Like, that's what they're doing. They're making sure that they can go and block anything and take it out. And they can say, they can make any determination what they want to say what is, a foreign adversary. So if they say that Professor Jeremy is being a Russian stooge, they could take care of it. The historic rise in anti-Semitism has been documented both by the federal government, which showed FBI hate crime data reaching historic levels last year, and the ADL, which tracks a 336% rise since the Hamas terror acts on Israel of October 7th. What are your thoughts on that so far? When you hear that statement right there, isn't it? And listen, I'm not going to say there's no anti-Semitism out there. I would say the state of Israel fuels the anti-Semitism, right? That's probably the reason the Zionists are going to fuel the anti-Semitism, because there's a difference between a Zionist and somebody who's Jewish. It's really, to tell you the truth, there's a big difference between somebody who is anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic, and they try to conflate the two. But can't they just use different metrics to say that it's up 336%? I mean, aren't they using some type of metrics in which they can inflate these, really inflate these numbers, Professor?
I think so. I mean, Israel has gone way over the top in its operations in Gaza. It's horror. Much of the world is looking on what Israel is doing in horror. So everybody who wants to question what Israel is doing is somehow an anti-Semite in their view. And I mean, I think they've totally discredited themselves in the eyes of most of the population, including in the United States. A huge number of Democrats are saying they're not going to vote for Joe Biden because of the support for genocide in Israel. So, I mean, they're basically branding tens of millions of people around the world as anti-Semites because they're opposed to genocidal conduct by an extremist government that even a huge number of Jews do not support. I mean, I'm Jewish. I believe that the idea of Israel is good. I don't want to see the Israelis brutalizing the Palestinians. So call me an anti-Semite, but I don't agree at all with what the Israeli government is doing, and nor do many Jewish people.
Yeah, I'm very proud of the Jewish people in this country who've stood up against the Zionists out there that say this is wrong, not in our name, not blood on our hands. And you hit it on the nose too as well, the way they're trying to say that these rallies, all these populist right people who are freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech, free speech absolutist. Where's our friend Willie Bragg? He's a free speech absolutist, right? Now all of a sudden you're going to tell people they can't march at a rally because they're kind of saying from the river to the sea is is an anti-Semitic chant. It's ridiculous what they're trying to do here. They're really trying to thwart everything, and it's just another form of censorship. And what they're pushing right here is another form of censorship. So all the Republicans in the House, and you had the squad members even voting against this, right? I mean, look at the squad showing up here and there nowadays, right? For some good votes. They put their names on a letter, a little bit too late for Julian Assange, but they did so. And now they got them voting over here in the right way. Meanwhile, all those Republicans, except for people like Warren Davidson, who we're going to show right now, and of course we have Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's crazy. Let's take a listen at this one right over here that Jamie's got ready to play. Warren Davidson and what he's talking about, what this bill is really about.
Remember before Elon Musk bought the crime scene at Twitter? It was all a conspiracy theory that these algorithms were silencing and canceling people. You guys are crazy. No, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he did keep it operating with 80% fewer employees. But what we found is a lot of the employees were trying to do content moderation, shape who sees what and how they see it, which algorithms are used, how does it promote certain people and filter others. So really what you're saying here is if you're not fully engaged with America's three-letter agencies in content moderation, we plan to TikTok you. Remember before Elon Musk bought the...
We plan to TikTok you, and it's true. Now, listen, I want to say that he only showed selective, people who were demonetized and censored, right? He didn't open up the doors and let everybody see everything. He chose what you can see. And I thought what he did was kind of divisive because he only showed Republicans that were getting, demonetized and censored and spanked. There was a lot of leftists like us that have the show today doing what we're doing today that got censored and demonetized and deplatformed for saying certain things, especially because we were leftists and we were calling out our own side.
Well, that's true. That whole committee, they're the I forget now the name, but they branded themselves the New Church Committee, and they were investigating abuses of the FBI and CIA, but they were focused on conservative groups that were being targeted. And I think there is some truth to what they're saying, and it's good that they want to go after the FBI and CIA, but their narrow focus on conservatives and painting this image as conservatives as the main victims is a bit deceptive, especially, I mean, historically, the FBI and CIA came after, leftist groups and groups that really challenged the status quo, whether foreign or domestic policy. So there is a long history of that. And the specter of censorship now is really growing more and more ominous. So it's good that some people are speaking out, but it shouldn't. I agree with you. Conservatives are not the main victims, although some are facing victimization now.
It is nuts. I think it's anti-establishment that really gets spanked more than anything. Jamie, how much time are we in right now?
And I mean, big target. Anyone who questioned the virus and the government handling of that, the Ukraine conflict, those are the ones who are going to be targeted.
Oh yeah, it says that right now in the YouTube guidelines. If you glorify war and talk about the Ukraine war, that they can remove material and demonetize it. So they're doing that right now.
Yeah.
What do we have right next, Jamie? Thomas Massey. Let's take that LOL down so we can see this over here. The so-called TikTok ban is a Trojan horse. The president will be given the power to ban websites, not just apps. The person breaking the new law is deemed to be the U.S. or offshore internet hosting service or app store, not the foreign adversary. And you can see if you click on some of these pieces of the legislation itself, the term foreign adversary controlled application means a website. So if they say it's a foreign adversary, Jeremy Kuzmarov's a foreign adversary, take that website down, they can do so. Give me a little click on the next part. It also says right here, providing services to distribute, maintain, or update. Providing internet hosting services to enable the distribution, maintenance. So what they're doing, and this is why I call it the Patriot Act on steroids. I don't even know in this particular bill, because I know the last bill, and when you go through it, TikTok or ByteDance, which is the parent company, the one that people like Dan Crenshaw, iPatch McCain are complaining about and acting like they can steal your data. It's like only the American companies can sell your data, not you. How dare the Chinese do it? But the Cambridge Analytica and all these other companies, these big tech companies in America can take your data and sell it, but nobody else. And now they're just making it even harder for anybody to get any information out there. They're trying to control, Professor, the flow of information.
Absolutely. And it gets back to what we were saying earlier, that they're increasingly desperate. They're losing the narrative. People don't buy, what they're saying about Ukraine. They don't buy what they're saying about the, COVID-19. They don't buy what they're saying about, you name the issue. There's huge disaffection. And the internet is an exciting space for people to express themselves. And they can't have that, So, it showed their true color, that authoritarians, and that we don't really have functioning democracy today in the United States.
So let's take a look at when you got to count on somebody to speak up for freedom of speech in the House. Just go to Marjorie Taylor Greene and let her speak on your behalf. The world is turned upside down when you got Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking out on behalf of freedom of speech. She wanted the people who were protesting against, wanting a ceasefire. She wanted to call them an insurrection and get them all thrown out. But here she is, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I rise today as the only member of Congress that has ever been banned by social media. On January 2nd of 2022, Twitter banned my personal account on which I was campaigning for Congress, raising money, and using my free speech to inform the voters in my district they can vote for me. This was not by a company owned by China. This was by American-owned Twitter. This came on the heels of our own United States government working with big tech and working with social media companies to censor and ban Americans' free speech. I believe that this bill can cause future problems. It's opening Pandora's box, and I'm opposed to this bill. Most Americans don't trust the United States government because of our experience dealing with it. Never forget that the United States government also was the one that provided the Russia hoax to Americans. It also worked to ban Americans' free speech. It also has worked in so many ways to illegally, warrantless spy on Americans through FISA. If we wanted to be serious about stopping a foreign adversary, if we wanted to be serious about stopping China, we would stop China from buying our U.S. farmland. We would raise up our American energy independence. We would also stop the Green New Deal and not rely on China, who owns and operates 85% of the battery market worldwide. There are dangers that lie ahead.
That's good. There's only so much Marjorie Taylor Greene I can really, stomach. She did use it as an opportunity to make sure she was going to bash China, and throw in some political point of views. But, I'm glad that at least she stood up and said, hey, listen, it wasn't a foreign adversary that we had to worry about. I was censored by American companies here. American companies are the ones who censored me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, and that's a bedrock of the U.S. Constitution, the right to free speech. And, where are the liberals? That's what we've been saying on this show. Where are the liberals to stand up for civil liberties and free speech principles? And even if you don't agree with somebody, the whole purpose of democracy is to have debate, and including debate with people you don't agree with. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, we can say what's good and bad about her, but she has a right to say it. And there's no reason to ban her at all. And that's just wrong.
Let's take a look at the roll call, because it's important to know who voted for this, who voted against it. And before we get to Senior Ted Cruz, and we will get to him, but you can see right there, Professor. You know what I'm saying? We had a lot of yays here, 352, 65 nays, 50 of them Democrats. There were 15 Republicans that held the line. But are you surprised about this over here, this particular vote? I mean, so many people across the board are okay with this. I mean, why aren't they getting any pressure from their elected officials?
Yeah, and why the voters, like as we were discussing, Californians were supporting Adam Schiff. I guess he was voting for it, right?
He voted for it. Debbie Wasserman Schultz voted for it.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone in their right mind would vote for those people like Schiff or Wasserman Schultz, who claim to be liberals and really they've been pushing that Russiagate hoax. I mean, I think Marjorie Greene is correct about that. It's been proven. The Mueller report, showed there was no evidence at all that Trump was a Russian agent. And I mean, Adam Schiff he's really a character right out of the 1950s in the John Birch Society. And somehow he's in the Democratic Party. I mean, the John Birch Society promoted conspiracy that Dwight Eisenhower was a communist agent, and he has the gall to call other people like Robert Kennedy conspiracy theorists when he pervaded this Russiagate conspiracy for years. He's the real conspiracy theorist, and he's an authoritarian who supports forever wars and wants to promote regime change in Russia. And just an awful person. But sadly, we have Congress is filled with people like that, and they're the un-American. It's totally, again, bedrock of American principles is free speech and debate. That's how our democracy can function.
Well, let's play Senior Ted Cruz over here and listen to what he has to say about this particular ban. I mean, the whole thing is they were all scapegoating China to the umpth degree. China. It drives me crazy. Here's the CEO versus the Senate.
If you look at what is on TikTok in China, you are promoting to kids science and math videos, educational videos, and you limit the amount of time kids can be on TikTok. In the United States, you are promoting to kids self-harm videos and anti-Israel propaganda. Why is there such a dramatic difference? If you look at what is on TikTok in China.
So what are your thoughts about that? Because that's something I hear all the time. It really drives me crazy. The party of individual responsibility. That's why I get so nuts about China. They want to blame China on all our decisions, our problems, right? Even when you talk about NAFTA, right? Like it was their fault. Like, sure, we'll build all your stuff that you need for you. We'll use central planning to pull our people out of poverty, you know. But then, you know, a bunch of people nowadays, especially people on the populist right, point the finger and blame China like it's their fault. Also, the way they, what's the word I'm looking for over here? I don't want to say relish, but the way they celebrate people in their society in China, where they celebrate mathematicians, they celebrate engineers, right? We celebrate people who have OnlyFans and whatnot. It's our society. How can we sit there with a straight face? And of course, he had to throw that little anti-Semitic jab in there too as well. But isn't it about our society, the way we're so much consumed with BS, and where the Chinese, you know, the way they celebrate certain people? Have you ever seen that meme or that video where it's little kids and they're in China, in Beijing, and they're bouncing a ball, and they move next door to the person next to them, and they bounce their ball, and they move next door to the person bouncing their ball, and they're teaching children how to work together as a team. And the words that are the first time I saw that meme, it said, "We're effed, we're screwed," right? Like, we're in trouble, because they're teaching their kids so much a different culture right now. They're educating them, they're absorbing everything, and we're getting our kids distracted with culture war BS and reality shows. Your thoughts on that, Professor?
Well, my thoughts is, yeah, I mean, we can learn from China. I mean, China is a great civilization with, you know, tremendous achievements. So if they're doing something well, you know, we should try and learn from them. I mean, yeah, it's very disturbing. The rhetoric is right out of the, you know, early 20th century, when you had this kind of yellow peril mentality, and it's often blatantly promoting racism. And it's fear mongering, and this could lead us into a major war with China. I mean, the United States is currently encircling China militarily, and supporting covertly separatist elements in Taiwan, and arming Taiwan to the teeth, and, you know, turning Taiwan into what they call a porcupine, when China regards it as part of China. And even U.S. Policy officially recognizes Taiwan as part of China. So they're just saber rattling and demonizing China, and inspiring hate among the population against China, when America, has a history. I mean, the Nixon administration opened up China and restored U.S. diplomatic relations with China, and there were a lot of goodwill between the two countries that developed starting in the 1970s. And that's what we need to continue. I mean, China's economy is booming. We can harness their growth to our own economic growth. We don't have to see them as a threat. The positive features of their society is something we can try and learn from and emulate to improve our society. But instead, you have these political demagogues out there demonizing China. And in part, it's because they misruled America, so they have to blame a foreign force for all the problems, and they just turn to China.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of people on the populist right, too, that want to blame China for everything. It just drives me crazy. They're supposed to be the party of individual responsibility, but they actually think that, like, China's trying to infiltrate us from within and take us down. One of those guys in Congress that I just can't stand, I just wish he would go away. Some people call him Eye Patch McCain. I call him Dan Crenshaw. This guy wants to go into Mexico without their permission to take out the cartels. He wants to do it so badly that he spoke Spanish and addressed a press conference in Spanish, talking to AMLO, saying, "Hey, man, why don't you work with us?" And AMLO was saying, "Hey, this is not your country. You're not coming in here, without our permission." But this guy, he'll do anything to start a war, any type of rhetoric against China. Here he is. Tucker Carlson left a nice tweet talking about how Dan Crenshaw is going to lie about our agencies, and any congressional members that are so cozy with the deep state, the intelligence apparatus, it's red flags all over the place, like it is right here with Dan Crenshaw.
Access to everything TikTok has, which we did on all Americans, and with data and with access to your app that you're addicted to, you can vastly manipulate an entire population, which the Chinese have done already.
Are you worried that our intelligence agencies are doing the same thing domestically?
Am I worried that I know that they're not.
They're not manipulating Americans. They're not controlling the flow of information.
Yeah. Did you have some evidence otherwise that you'd like to share?
I mean,
okay.
Before
any serious questions?
Congressman, you asked for an example of the U.S. intelligence agencies meddling in our information. What about before the 2020 election, when 50 members came out and said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? Does that count?
No, because they were retired.
They were retired.
But the FBI had the laptop for over a year.
There's nothing even close to what TikTok access to everything TikTok has.
There it is. And there's so many things you can talk about. COINTELPRO, all these ways that they can go after our citizens, manipulate what's going on. How about Operation Mockingbird, Professor? Do you think that the military industrial complex or the three-letter agencies are trying to manipulate the population to get into wars and amongst other things?
No, of course not. They would never do that.
I know.
Well, and another thing they never talk. I mean, the New York Times had a report maybe a month or two ago about how under William Byrne, the CIA has ramped up their own operations within China, and there's like a massive effort, to destabilize China and interfere in their politics, which dwarfs anything China may be doing here in the United States. And in fact, there was a book I reviewed that was kind of a yellow peril book warning about China. And all she could uncover was one possible spy who allegedly seduced a female Chinese spy, allegedly slept with like a small town mayor to try and get something out of him. And that was the only example she could come up with. And it was like this sensational book about how China's subverting America. And her only example is this one female who slept with a small town mayor. So it's just much ado about nothing, but it served a political agenda of the GOP and the ruling establishment, again, that misruled America, so wants to create an enemy and is worried about China's rise, because they want to be the number one dominant world power, and they can't accept a rival power whose economy is booming, so they're trying to target China.
Do you think that we're going to have any type of hot war with China in the next several years? Do you have a question? I mean, what are your thoughts about that? Because you understand too as well. You're a historian. You teach history. The whole Japanese situation when it came to Pearl Harbor, it was all about sanctions, right? About bleeding them and strangleholding them, right? Taking away their imports, their oil, their energy, and the next thing you know, and also their involvement in Vietnam at one point, I believe it was at that time. We were upset about that because we wanted the French to go in there and control the resources. Maybe I'm getting my dates mixed up, but I believe that this, it was one of those economic wars that turned into a hot war eventually.
Well, yeah, I think it's important to study the history because the U.S. provoked the Pacific War because Japan was emerging as an empire in Southeast Asia that was starting to challenge European empires and even moving into European territory. And the United States was a rising empire in that period who had colonized the Philippines and wanted to dominate all of Southeast Asia as they do today. And, you had a pro-imperialist named Albert Beveridge in the early 1900s who said, "He who controls Asia controls the world." And, Japan was threatening to control that region of the world because they were growing strong in the 20s and 30s and establishing their own empire and threatening to establish a yen bloc that would undercut U.S. power. So the U.S. imposed the oil embargo on Japan, which was, they don't produce any oil there. It was designed to cripple their economy and provoke the Pearl Harbor attacks and even allowed those attacks to go forward. And that led to the Pacific War, and it's very likely the same thing could happen or will happen today. And the U.S. is planning for war because China is in the position of Japan in the 1920s and 30s. Their economies, they're growing strong. They're expanding their influence in Southeast Asia. They have the One Belt, One Road initiative. Of course, they're much less militaristic than Japan was, and that's a good thing. But the U.S. sees them as a threat. The U.S. wants to sustain its hegemony, all those military bases in Southeast Asia, and they could easily provoke a war with China over Taiwan. And the military is preparing for it. There was an article in the New York Times about a month ago discussing how the U.S. was carrying out training operations in Pacific Islands in preparation for a new Pacific War. And they quoted top military commanders who were getting ready for it.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm with the professor, Jeremy Kuzmarov, talking about the TikTok ban, which really isn't a ban on TikTok. It's more about a ban on making sure that the information is quelled, is controlled by the deep state, military industrial complex, your government, your three-letter agencies, and more. That's it for LOL.